If you are a new backpacker, you've come to the right place. This is going to be 7 gear mistakes that so many beginners make. And even if you're not a beginner backpacker, you're still in the right place. It never hurts to have a refresher and maybe reminisce on how you also made some of these stupid mistakes. Okay, this is the part of the video where I would normally ask you to subscribe, but I'm not going to do that. We're just going to jump right into it. I'm not going to waste time asking you guys to help me get to my goal of 100,000 subscribers and ask you to please subscribe if you're not already, so I can hit that goal. We're not gonna waste time with that. Let's jump into it. The first gear mistake is not considering efficiency when choosing your backpacking gear, which sounds kind of complicated, to be fair, so I'm not trying to confuse you. You're new at backpacking, you're already confused as about everything. Like, what the hell is this piece of gear? Like, how do I use that? Efficiency is very important when you're backpacking. You're exerting a lot of energy, you're on your feet all day, you're gonna be sore, you're gonna be painful. I'm making backpacking sound terrible, wow. And so you don't wanna waste time and be fumbling around with inefficient gear. It's just gonna aggravate you and it's gonna cause you to lose time that you could be resting, relaxing, or continuing to hike. I think the #1 example of inefficient gear would be water filters. So back in the day, most people were using those, pump filters. And they got the job done, of course. They gave you the clean water that you needed. But every time you want to use one of those suckers, you gotta sit down, you gotta take off your backpack, you gotta pull the pump out of the backpack, you gotta sit there and pump it. And it's just very inefficient. And so nowadays, you can just buy a Sawyer Squeeze, for instance, or something similar, slap that sucker onto the top of a smart water bottle, and then all you have to do is just stop hiking. You don't even have to take your pack off. Dip your bottle into the water, take it out, screw the filter on, and another example would be your backpack selection. It's gonna be very inefficient if you buy a backpack that doesn't have pockets and storage on the outside for items that you need to have accessible. It's very inefficient to have to stop, take off your backpack, and go digging through things just to find certain items. You wanna get a backpack that has easily accessible pockets and places where you can store stuff. The next gear mistake is not knowing your gear. And this is a tough one because when you're first starting out, you don't have any experience yet. How are you supposed to know your gear? And so I don't think you're really gonna ever be able to know your gear 100% without actually taking it out on the trail and using it, but you can still do some basic research to make sure that your sleeping bag is going to be warm enough, for instance, because you don't want to be freezing your ass off in the woods, dude. You can test out some of your clothing to make sure that it's comfortable. Again, you're not going to be able to experience what it's going to be like to hike in that clothing all day, but if you put it on and you take it for a couple laps around the block and it's already giving you some problems and you already don't like it, then you clearly should not bring that shit on your hike with you. And then there's some things with your gear that you can definitely get to know before you actually use it on the trail. Like, for instance, how to set up your tent. It blows my mind that some people go backpacking with a tent that they've never set up before.
Smash the like button if you're ready to see my new tent, which I do not know how to set up.
Like, it's not the end of the world. You'll probably figure it out. But still, you want to get to know your gear as well as you possibly can before you go. So, dude, set it up. Set that tent up in your backyard or at a park or at the mall. That's not going to work. The next gear mistake, and I'll admit this one is a little bit personal, so there are going to be a few people out there that disagree with this, but I think generally speaking, experienced backpackers will agree with me on this one. This mistake is using a water bladder or reservoir instead of water bottles. I did this on some of my very first backpacking trips, and it wasn't very long before that reservoir leaked and completely soaked my sleeping bag. And I was pissed, and I was like, never again. Water bottles, from here on out, I will burn every backpacking reservoir that I have or see. It is convenient to have the hose that comes right here, and so you can just be walking along and then, oh, you're thirsty, instead of having to reach, you can just go. But you're risking that leak, first of all. And second of all, what happens when you gotta fill that sucker up? You're out of water. Well, that means you gotta stop, you gotta dig through your pack, probably take some things out of your pack. I don't know, it depends on the pack, obviously, but you gotta dig through your pack, you gotta pull that thing out, and then you gotta pump water or filter water into it somehow. It's just really inconvenient. Not to mention, let's say you're hiking on a trail that has a ton of water sources. Water is very heavy. And so if you're backpacking, you're already carrying enough weight. You don't wanna be carrying a bunch of extra weight in the water that you're carrying. Of course, you gotta have enough with you, but if there's lots of water sources, you might be able to get away with only carrying like a liter or even less potentially. If you have like a 2-liter water bladder, it's inconvenient to fill it up, it's a pain, and so you're probably just gonna fill it with 2 liters and then use it till it's drained and then fill it back up. And that means you're carrying more water weight than you might need to if you just have a couple bottles on the outside of your backpack. It's a lot easier to just customize how much water you're carrying based on when the next water source is, and it will save you some weight. This next mistake is not bringing the right gear for the conditions that you're gonna face. Once again, you will get better at this as you gain more experience in the backcountry, but I wanted to include this on the list because this one can be dangerous potentially. You really gotta be very mindful of the gear that you're bringing and the conditions that you're going to be facing when you're out there. Because if it's gonna be really cold weather, for instance, you better make damn sure that the stuff you have, your sleeping bag, your clothing, your tent, is gonna keep you warm so you don't die and then I might lose a subscriber, which is tragic. I don't want dead subscribers. I want my subscribers to be alive and well and thriving on the trail. That's kind of a dramatic example. One that's a little bit less dramatic is the total opposite. Let's say that you're going on a trip and it's gonna be super, super hot. And for some reason, you didn't pack for those conditions. You packed for the conditions I just mentioned in the previous example where it's gonna be super cold. Now you're carrying a bunch of extra weight, a sleeping bag that's way too warm for what you need, way too much extra clothes, and it's super hot. You're hauling around all this extra weight on your back, so it's making you even hotter, making it even more uncomfortable. And next thing you know, you get heat stroke and you die, and once again, I lose a subscriber. God damn it. Do research on the conditions that you're gonna face and make sure you do your damned best to have the correct gear for those conditions. This next mistake is bringing only one lighter with you. That's right, you should always have a lighter with you when you're backpacking. Of course, this is gonna be obvious to some of you. If you use a stove, you gotta light your stove with it, or you like to have campfires, or you just like to 420 blaze it just 24/7 on the trail. But if you don't do any of those things, you might be like, why do I need a lighter? Well, first of all, if anything, for emergency situations where you might need to start a fire or something, but that's besides the point. You should not just have one lighter, you should have two, because lighters are very easy to lose. They're small little suckers. And how much would it suck if you lost your lighter, you didn't have a backup, and then you didn't have any way to use your stove for the rest of your hike? Or even worse, you couldn't light your weed. Lighters are small, they're easy to lose, they weigh nothing, and so you might as well take two of them. Another gear mistake is, it's kind of a gear mistake, draining your phone battery too quickly. Let's say you get to your campsite, it's the first night of your hike, and you have some service up there. So you get into your tent, you open up OnlyFans, you go to town, next thing you know, your battery is dead and you're trying to hike the next day and you can't look at your map on your phone because your phone's dead. Or you get to some amazing viewpoint, you want to take a picture for your Tinder profile, you can't do that because once again, your phone's dead. So when you're backpacking and you have cell service, I'm not saying you can't ever use it, but just be mindful of how much you're using. Don't start scrolling and then get sucked into it and just drain your battery. And then when you don't have service, your cell phone is going to be using a lot of battery when it's searching for service. Have you ever noticed that when you don't have service, it says like no service at the top, your battery still drains pretty fast. And so when you don't have service, put your phone in airplane mode. If you're using a GPS app to navigate on the trail, it's still gonna work when it's in airplane mode and it's gonna save you a lot of battery. Of course, you can also bring a power bank. I would definitely recommend that. I'll have a link to my favorite one in the description. The next gear mistake is stressing out about your gear. Don't stress. Don't stop it. It's gonna be okay. Now, the fact that you're watching this video means you're probably extremely stressed out and you're just a really anxious. It's very important to be mindful of your gear, obviously. It's very important to avoid some of these mistakes. It's very important for your safety to have gear that's going to be adequate when you're out there, but you should still try not to stress out about it too much. Again, it's easier said than done, and the more experience you get actually backpacking and not just watching stupid videos about gear, the less you will stress out about this. But just trust that as long as you've done enough proper research, you're making the best gear decisions that you possibly can, and then you'll go out, you'll use the gear, you'll probably learn what you like and what you don't like, and you can adjust and move forward from there. Don't compare your gear to other people. Everyone has different things that they like. Everyone has different budgets. Everyone has different hiking styles. There is no source of truth when it comes to backpacking gear. So don't stress out about it. And while you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button. That will also lower your stress. And of course, if you watch these videos a lot and you appreciate the content that I make, please check out my Patreon, patreon.com/KyleHatesHiking. You'll get some bonus content. You'll get a direct line to me, and it is the #1 way to support my content. Thank you so much to everyone who's on there. I want to kiss all of you. Thanks for watching, everybody.